George Washington's Grist Mill was part of the original Mount Vernon plantation, constructed during the lifetime of the United States' first president. The original structure was destroyed about 1850. The Commonwealth of Virginia and the Mount Vernon Ladies Association have reconstructed the grist mill and the adjacent distillery. The reconstructed buildings are located at their original site 3 miles west of Mount Vernon proper near Woodlawn Plantation in Alexandria, Virginia. Because the reconstructed buildings embody the distinctive characteristics of late 18th century methods of production and are of importance to the history of Virginia, the site is listed on the National Register of Historic Places despite the fact that the buildings are not original. History. George Washington inherited Mount Vernon in 1754. In 1771 he erected a large stone grist mill on the plantation to replace a mill his father had built in the 1730s. The new mill was located 3 miles west of Mount Vernon on Doe Run Creek. It was used to produce flour and corn meal for the plantation as well as high-quality flour for export to the West Indies, England, and continental Europe. Washington also built a house for the miller and a cooperage to supply barrels for the mill, and later, the distillery operation. The mill was powered by a large water wheel. To ensure a steady power supply, water was diverted from Piney Branch into Doe Run Creek above the mill's headrace. The additional water flow significantly increased the mill's production capacity. In 1791 Washington automated his mill using technology developed and patented by Oliver Evans of Delaware. Evans was personally acquainted with the mill and had repaired some of its works. Once the grist mill was well established, Washington's farm manager, James Anderson, suggested building a whiskey distillery adjacent to the mill. When it was completed in 1797, the distillery was the largest in America. By 1799 it had become one of Washington's most successful enterprises, producing 11,000 gallons of whiskey per year. A variety of whiskeys were produced at the site along with brandy and vinegar. The most common whiskey recipe used 60% rye, 35% corn, and 5% malted barley. Smaller amounts of rye whiskey were distilled up to 4 times and were more expensive. Some whiskey was also flavored with cinnamon. When rye was scarce, the distillery used wheat, apple, peach and persimmon brandies were also produced. The whiskey was marketed in Alexandria, Virginia, or shipped directly from Mount Vernon's dock on the Potomac River. The distillery process produced a significant waste stream, which was fed to 150 cattle and 30 hogs that were kept at the site. After Washington's death in December 1799, the grist mill and distillery passed to his nephew, Lawrence Lewis. In 1808 he rented the site to Alexandria merchant James Douglas. The last known reference to the distillery business is an 1808 whiskey advertisement. The distillery building burned in 1814. This is documented by a small insurance payment made to Lewis that year. In 1848 Lewis, a grandson, sold the grist mill property along with Woodlawn Plantation. That is the last record of the original buildings. Local oral history suggests that the mill was quite run down by 1848, and it was razed around 1850. Reconstruction. In 1932 the Commonwealth of Virginia purchased 6.65 acres around the old mill site. The state initiated an archaeological field survey of the site with the goal of reconstructing the grist mill, distillery and other Washington-era buildings. The grist mill and miller's house were reconstructed in 1933. Shortly after their completion, the site was opened as a state park. However, by 1936 the state had stopped maintaining the park. Sometime around 1940 a local chapter of the Future Farmers of America began caring for the grounds, but public use of the park was sparse. The state resumed responsibility for the park in 1962. Over the next 2 decades, several additional structures were built on the site. In 1997, Virginia conveyed the property to the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, which owns and operates the Mount Vernon estate. From 1997 to 2002, the main structures underwent major renovation, including rebuilding the internal mill workings, renovation of the miller's house, restoration of the mill races, and construction of new brick pathways throughout the site. Because the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of late 18th century production methods, the site was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2003. In 1999, archaeologists began to investigate the distillery site. After 5 years of study, the distillery reconstruction began. It was completed and opened to the public in 2007. This $2.1 million project was funded by the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States and the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America. Historic site. George Washington's Grist Mill is located on 6.65 acres, approximately 3 miles west of the Mount Vernon estate. It is situated on an eastward sloping lot bounded by Doe Run Creek to the south, pasture land belonging to the National Trust for Historic Preservation to the west, the park's paved parking lot and a housing subdivision to the north, and a wooded lot to the east. The property is bisected by Virginia Route 235. All the site's historic elements are located on the east side of the highway. This includes the Grist Mill, distillery, miller's house and several archaeological sites. The west side of the property contains one archaeological site and 3 non-contributing structures. Grist Mill. The Grist Mill is a colonial revival-style stone building that was constructed in 1933 based on archaeological and documentary evidence. Its rectangular footprint measures 37 feet by 50 feet. Its foundation is built into a hillside, with 2½ stories above ground on the north side and 3½ stories on the south side. It is a masonry structure built with sandstone arranged in a random pattern with stone lintels and sills. The mill's roof is covered with wooden shingles. On the south side of the building is a vertical board door on the first floor. There is an identical door on the ground floor on the north side as well. Both have stone landings. The mill race enters the mill on the north side and exits at ground level on the south side. The internal mill workings and structural members installed during the 1933 reconstruction were taken from an 1818 grist mill located near Front Royal, Virginia. Some of the structural members from Front Royal Mill are still in the building. However, most of the mill workings were replaced between 1997 and 2002. The interior has exposed masonry walls with heavy timber framing. The flooring throughout the building is random width pine. A masonry fireplace is in the southwest corner of the first floor. The grinding platform is accessed from the second floor. The third level is one large room with rolling screens and other processing equipment. A staircase in the western half of the structure runs from the first floor to attic. The mill's 2 grinding stones are powered by a pitchback water wheel. The mill machinery is enclosed in a Hurst frame, built from heavy oak and pine beams. Its frame is built directly on the mill's foundation, and is not connected to the walls. This protects the structure from the machinery's potentially damaging vibrations. The Hurst frame occupies the eastern half of the first 2 levels. Miller's house. The miller's house was built at the same time as the grist mill. The reconstructed house was sited on its original site. The design for the building is based on archaeological evidence and a mid-19th century drawing. Its wood frame structure rests on a stone foundation. It is clad with beaded weatherboard. In 1970, a 1.5-story addition doubled the size of the building. The interior of the original section is laid out in a whole parlor configuration with 2 major rooms and a small bathroom. This area is used as a gift shop. The new section of the house includes a kitchen, pantry, and additional retail space for the gift ship distillery. Because there is no surviving example of 18th century distillery, The reconstruction of Washington's distillery required extensive archaeological and documentary investigation before an authentic structure could be built. The archaeological study began in 1997 and lasted until 2006. During the excavation, archaeologists uncovered the distillery's stone foundation, which is some 36 inches thick. Some of the original foundation stones are over 24 inches in diameter. The initial course of the sandstone superstructure was intact along the southern foundation, and was 2 feet thick. They discovered the location of 5 stills and boilers, and found many objects used in the distilling process, along with fragments of domestic items such as teacups, drinking glasses and buttons. The distillery was reconstructed in 2007. To ensure an authentic reconstruction, the wood was finished by hand and the construction used handmade nails and hardware. There were some compromises necessary to comply with modern building codes and safety requirements. For example, the original structure's 30 by 75 foot footprint was extended by 15 feet in order to house an elevator and modern staircase for public use. The distillery has 2 floors with 5 large copper stills, mash tubs and a boiler that demonstrate the 18th century distilling process. The building includes a storage cellar for whiskey barrels, an office, and 2 bedrooms where the site manager and his assistant would have lived. The building's floors are made of 3 different materials. A stone floor is used in the mashing area to reduce vibrations that can disturb the fermentation process. Around the boilers and under the staircase is a brick floor, and an elevated wooden floor around the stills. Wooden planks are used for flooring in the rest of the building. Access. The Grist Mill, distillery, and gift shop are open to the public from April through October. They are located approximately 3 miles west of Mount Vernon's main gate on Virginia Route 235. Tickets to tour the Grist Mill and distillery are available at Mount Vernon and the Grist Mill's gift shop. The tickets can be combined admission to Mount Vernon or purchased separately. Public transportation is available between Mount Vernon and the Grist Mill.